Great, thank you. Well, first of all, this is hard. I can hardly see you. I can't see anyone in the back, but I can see some of you in the front. First of all, I mean, it does say security awareness training, and this is kind of my background, but actually for this talk, I'd like to invite you to not really think about security awareness as much, but I'd like to think more about you yourselves, because in the end, you're also all users, right? By the way, I don't like the word user. I think it's been used quite badly. Anyways, so I have a set of questions for you. Who in this room, and it's really hard, now I can see. Who in this room thinks that they would never ever fall for a fish? Okay, I'm glad. Are you all on Troy Hunt's mailing list? For those of you who don't know, Troy Hunt founded Have I Been Pawned? And, well, he was pawned himself not so long ago, and he did a great job. He basically posted to everyone, including his mailing list, that was leaked, that he was breached. And he said, to all of you who haven't read it, actually, the reason he clicked, and I mean, he's really an expert, right? All of you. He knows all about the links, all about everything. And it was just at the wrong time, and he was in the wrong setting, and he just didn't pay attention. And then it happened. And it's actually quite crazy to think that, you know, his entire mailing list was leaked and breached just because he clicked. You know, and he entered the credential on a page that looked very, very real, and he was really tired. That's when I kind of think, where's the security engineering? Why isn't there like a second factor or something before you can actually extract a whole mailing list? MailChimp, hello? Anyways, so now that we've established we're all vulnerable because we're all people, I want to move away from the phishing and kind of move more into like social engineering in general and how this has changed in the age of AI. Thank you for the introduction. You already know a lot about me. What I mainly do nowadays is I really advocate for, or we at Switch, at Human-Centered Security Competence Center, we really advocate for a human-centered security approach, which means thinking of how can we make it safer for people to be in this digital world that an ethical hacker once told me was, you know, the absolute Wild West, yet we have our entire lives in this digital world. And the vast majority of us are really non-expert. And the vast majority of the population doesn't even know how to read a URL because they've never been taught. They don't know that they shouldn't look at the pictures first, but, you know, actually read what's up there in the browser. And we think a lot about how we can change this. So, today, I'm going to guide you through this agenda, where first of all, you know, I want to pose the question, what's real? Increasingly, it's really hard for us humans to actually know what's real, what isn't. The technical solutions aren't quite there yet. I want to kind of, you know, pose some ideas to you why I think the traditional training that we've done in this domain really is failing. And I want to propose some measures. Now, I only concentrate on how to defend against social engineering. I'm not saying this is the only thing you should do from now on. Like, I still very much think prevention and prevention campaigns and designing proper behavior change interventions, spoiler, that's not a phishing simulation, are very valuable and very much needed. And if you have any questions around that, do come and talk to me and join our SIG, and I'll talk more about that later. So, what's real? You all know this story, Arup, the UK engineering firm that got hacked last year. I mean, only a year ago. Already seems like old news because back then it was actually kind of fairly new that you had someone in a conference meeting with a deepfake conference meeting a year later, and we're at the level, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but where you can actually, anyone with a laptop or, well, access to the internet and a credit card can access services for face swapping software where you can automatically dial into Zoom, into Microsoft Teams, into wherever, and basically look and sound like Taylor Swift. If you don't believe me, I can show you where it's been done. At the same time, we also see, and I can definitely talk for the constituents that we have at Switch-CERT, that I think these figures are probably, well, if CrowdStrike say so, are accurate, that the phishing attacks are really increasing. This number is quite crazy. Even if it's not that high, I can definitely say we see a lot more of them. A lot of them are still just your average kind of spoofing phone numbers, and I think we only had one or two occasions where we think there was a voice deepfake involved. But, you know, there's no reason why this isn't going to increase a lot more, because with Gen AI and all those tools being so widely available, it basically means anyone from any bedroom can access these tools to manipulate people and get information or money or whatever. So that's bad news. The other thing that is kind of difficult is that people, as this statistic show, it's a report from the Cybersecurity Alliance and CyberSafe. They do this security behavior report annually. If you're not familiar with this and you're interested in the topic, do look it up. It's got great statistics and it's from loads of different countries. And what we can see here on the slide is that especially younger generations are overconfident in their ability of detecting fake content, so AI synthesized content. Why is that relevant? Well, if you think about it, those are usually the generations that really spend almost all of their lives online. So I would say this is bad news. On top of that, and this is a fairly old study in AI terms, it dates back to 2022, but researchers really found out that we actually trust AI faces more than real ones. And also we find it very hard to distinguish. So we're really not in a good place. I think in general as a society, and if you look at the developments with like disinformation and all the rest, I don't know. So in this kind of world, how do we deal with the deepfakes that lots of people think will be increasing? What do we tell people? How do we teach people? And how do we also, and that includes ourselves, how do we make ourselves more resilient against this threat? In the security domain, we've always kind of thought that identity is something that is not so questionable, or that is kind of quite fixed, right? The face, voice, and all of that, or it has been kind of for some time. I mean, this is more shaky now, and it's definitely completely shaky now, because so deepfakes are super hard to detect, or actually even impossible to detect, depending on who you are, and especially if it's in the middle of the night or it's the wrong situation, you have absolutely no chance. So the way to mitigate is you really have to basically teach people a zero trust mindset, which is actually quite horrible. But you have to kind of get the idea across that something is inauthentic, like a voice or even a face online is inauthentic until proven otherwise. This is quite hard, right? How do you prove it? Well, you can use secret words, of course, or you can also think about in an organizational context where this might be a bit harder, depending of processes, right? What kind of information do you share and how and via which channels? And the third one that I really recommend is that we train people differently. So we don't talk about all the different types of social engineering there are, all the different types of attacks with all their kind of difficult technical names, but we just train people to stop and pause whenever someone asks for something, and the more urgency or the nicer someone asks for a special favor, the more you should really think, okay, what's happening here? And this leads me to why I think traditional training really fails. Most organizations primarily do phishing simulations and e-learning. And in my bubble, which is primarily people who have nothing to do with security, I kind of have this little game where I ask them, so what do you like security? What do you think about it? Do you get trained? And, you know, and maybe I even mention passwords, and people go like this. And then I ask, so, you know, what's happening in your company? And it's always the same. People say, oh, yeah, boy, they get me to do this training, and it's actually really insulting. It's really insulting to my intelligence, because, you know, it's really stupid questions, and what everyone does is we just click through it because, you know, we have to do it. But it's just compliance, and to be honest, I don't really learn a lot. And then, like, phishing simulations are a whole different game. I'm not going to go into that. I could spend hours talking about it. But we know, so we do all this training, and if we actually look at the numbers of how much training is being done, I mean, it's still a lot less than the amount of money we invest in sort of the technical or the technological defenses. But if we look at how much we spend, we're not really seeing the results. And humans very much still get attacked, right? So why don't we have a different look at sort of the human operation system, and why don't we have a look at it from a behavioral psychology perspective? I was very pleased to hear Nina Sunde yesterday talk about Daniel Kahneman and the System 1 and System 2 thinking. If you don't know this book, go and read it. It's great. In a nutshell, I mean, most of you are probably engineers. Who thinks that they're always, at all times, very rational? Any hands? Wow, you're good. I see no hands. Okay, good. So most of the time, everyone, actually spends in System 1 thinking, which is the intuitive, the gut reaction, the easy way of jumping to conclusions, the first impressions, and very little time do we actually spend in System 2, which is the analytical, the critical thinking. Why is that? Well, our brains consume a lot of energy. And it's much more efficient to kind of, you know, go with what's called the heuristics. The problem is, I mean, usually it serves us well unless you manipulate us. Building on sort of Kahneman, you have psychologist Jonathan Haidt, who came up with this great analogy for thinking about behavior change and kind of the System 1 and System 2 thinking. And so basically, System 1 thinking is sort of like the emotional side, and imagine it to be an elephant. And System 2 thinking is the analytical, the rational side, so the rider of the elephant. And building on from that, we have Chip and Dan Heath. They also use this analogy in their book, and it's got nothing to do with my company, Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard. And it's all about behavior change. And they explain this really well, and they say, well, on top of this elephant, you have the rider holding the reins. And on first sight, you think this rider is the leader. But the problem is, it's really hard to control the elephant, because anytime the 6-ton elephant and the rider disagree about which direction to go, the rider is obviously going to lose, because the rider is completely overmatched. So if we go back to our training, and we see that our training really targets the rider, but attackers target the elephant, right? So we say stuff like, yeah, look for the sender, look for the link, look for I don't know what, which assumes that people are in the mindset to actually have the ability to kind of have, you know, be analytical in that moment. to do that sort of critical thinking and to really check those things, and that they have the attention for it. But the problem is, if it's well done, or not only if it's well done, but it's usually that the attackers attack the elephant. So, for example, you're on the way to a client's meeting, and then suddenly your boss is calling and telling you, you have to immediately do this, otherwise you're fired. I mean, fortunately, my boss is not that kind of person, but in some companies, maybe there will be. And, you're on the phone to a client's meeting. It's really important. What do? Of course, you're going to react appropriately, which would be to do whatever your boss is saying. It's authority, right? Or on social, you're daddling sort of on social media, was watching television, you're distracted, and then suddenly like someone you think says like, oh wow, there's this really great crypto coin, blah, 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 don't lose out again. And you're like, oh yeah, sounds great, like I'll invest. Has been done before. Or, on LinkedIn, like, hey, your talk on, at FirstCon was really great. Why don't we connect? And, like the story, and the story starts. So all of this is our emotions being targeted, and not, and the way we react is usually by emotionally reacting. Rather than thinking, okay, hang on, did I really meet this person? Actually, there were many people I don't quite remember, and I don't accept someone who doesn't know me. By the way, if you do want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do, but do mention the word squirrel, okay, everyone? So, how can we teach riders to better guide the elephant? First of all, we always say, well, people really have to understand how they're being targeted. So just like you do in sort of technical teams, understanding the adversarial mindset. Now, the beauty of that is it's really not technical at all, because it's about manipulation. And yeah, of course, we call it social engineering, but actually it's really emotional manipulation. And everyone knows how it's being done to different degrees. And everyone is always being manipulated to some extent. I mean, think people who have children, right? They're great manipulators. Or, how many times have you slightly nudged someone into doing something that you wanted them to do, right? Manipulation. So, usually we don't necessarily show people that, but I think the social engineering attack cycle is kind of quite an important tool to think about this a bit more methodically, or something like that. We don't really, I don't want to focus on the OSINT part. I really only want to focus on those two bottom parts, which is really about how you establish a relationship and then what you do with it. So, and if you go to the darknet, I've been told, I don't really hang out in the darknet myself so much, but I mean, I work in a CERT, so I have people who can do that for me. I've been told that, this book is also quite popular in those realms. And it's actually an amazing book by a psychologist called Cialdini, who is very famous in the sales community, of course, because it's all about how you ethically influence people or persuade people, to buy a car or, sign the contract or whatever it is. And it's great because he sort of made this framework, and he works with these 7 principles. I won't go through all of them because we don't have the time, but most of them you will recognize. And I've often read in kind of in the security world that, these are, like the human vulnerabilities. I don't think they're vulnerabilities. The reason why these principles of persuading people exist is because it has served us well to get to the point where we're at. Because we're social animals. We need to work together. As societies, we need, a certain order, a certain structure. And apparently these sort of ways of getting to work with people or working as societies have served us well. So don't think of them as vulnerabilities. in that way. But of course, they can be exploited. So I just want to pick social proof out of it, because we don't have time. This principle, I think, is really great in two ways. Well, first of all, you know, like the buy this coin now example that I showed earlier is I think it was done a lot with like cryptocurrency scams with fake. I think there was one or like several probably with like fake Elon Musk Twitter, well, X accounts now, whatever. And people really tend to behave like others. So, you know, like the recommendations, the references, but also kind of, you know, someone who's considered like a leading figure saying, do this, this is great, people will follow. And this is really great because this could also work in our favor around sort of social norms in an organization. So if suddenly, you know, the social norm is to always lock your screen, then people will follow. So, yeah. So now I'm moving to like the last part of the talk, the simple, well, a fairly simple solution, which is, which reaches sort of the meta level. So we're not talking about technical details here anymore. We're really talking about any form of manipulation in, well, primarily in our case, the digital world, but of course this is also applicable to like physical security, like, you know, your tailgating, all of those things. We basically have to think about how can we teach, you know, the riders to better guide the elephant. So how do we get to the stage where we get, where we recognize that actually we're completely off, you know, like scared, or we're in fight mode, you know, like the fight, flight, survival modes when we're being targeted emotionally. So how do we get people to realize this? Well, we could teach people to pause and to think, and I can't read it on my slide, to basically say, well, how do you feel? So every time you get someone wanting something from you, you pause and you ask yourself, how does this make me feel? And if it's anything related to, you know, like flattered, pressurized, do I feel like suddenly really important? All of those things, you're like, okay, interesting. Like, you know, I have a strong emotional reaction. We can ask, or we can say to people, every time you're being put under pressure, it really doesn't matter where, breathe. Also great exercise if you're like really stressed in an incident, take your time and do like a little breath exercise and just kind of breathe out to release the stress. And then suddenly you will be able to see much clearer and think much clearer again. And really important, just don't act. And now I'm actually at the point, because I've had someone trying to, actually a fairly bad social engineering attack in my personal life after someone very close to me had died, and I really wasn't in a great state. And the only reason why I didn't fall for it, and this came like via my brother, and so it was like, it was a whole chain, was because I somehow remembered that the best way of stopping stopping an attack is to kind of check back and to really say, hey, no, call me back, or can I call you back, and to take that break. And it's really interesting because there has been a study, I think, in the Journal of Criminology that says most of the people who get scammed have a sort of idea that they might be that they are being scammed right now, but they're not quite sure. And they go along because they think, well, maybe it's not a scam, and then I will actually win whatever amount of money, right? So, and obviously people are not aware that on the other side, they're really professionals who do nothing but manipulate people all day long. So the best way of defending is really to say, don't engage, never engage, just always just have a break, hang up and say, hey, can I call you back again? Or can I check via, I'll get in a work situation. I'll contact you via whatever, the company chat or whatever. And the last one, yeah, of course, always, you know, if someone asks you to take action, just don't. Just say, hey, I'll look into it, I'll get back to you on it later. And obviously that means, and the code words, of course, that I definitely recommend in personal settings. I don't know how, I haven't heard of anyone who does that in company settings yet, but that's yet to be discovered. So, and this is not just me making it up, but there is actually research on this that goes back to 2017 by Jenkins, which is great, and I'm running out of time, that's why I'm moving on. Take a picture or ask me for it. I think the slides are also available. I just want to show you one last slide on something called cyber mindfulness by Anna Collard. She has done her master thesis on this topic precisely, and she's an awareness practitioner, and she's now doing a PhD in this field. And she explains exactly why, what you can actually mitigate, the practices you should be thinking about, and then how you adopt it in your organization. And I mean, the beauty of it is, in general, it reduces stress, and it's actually very close to HR topics, and kind of much closer. So you don't even have to talk about security. You can really talk about well-being or stress, or kind of, you know, improving your mental health. And depending on the country you're in, you're really winning the hearts and minds of people much more than if you come with, you know, another security training that you have to comply with and click through if you want to get rid of it quickly. So, actionable takeaway, and I can't read this from here. As I said, if you're being put under pressure, just kind of, you know, take that, like really create that space, really do like the distance. And the training content, well, make people aware that, you know, we have a huge mafia out there. Use the word mafia because, you know, it's nothing like, I mean, cyber criminals, mafia, it's all, you know, mafia is something that everyone understands. It's a huge business. It's about making money. Everyone is a target. Teach them how it's being done. And then in an organizational context, really change the work habits. So if you have kind of time boxes for when you're actually checking your emails and the sort of context, which is stress-free and no distractions, so you only do this, and you have even, I don't know, a protocol for, you know, what's really critical or not, you know, think around those things and the processes, you will have a lot more success in having people work safer. And the last thing is sort of think of, you know, long-term cultural change. How can we change organizations to make them more resilient, to think more from the human perspective? What do people need to be able to work securely? And this is almost the end. I just want to invite you to our Swiss Security Awareness Day in Switzerland. It's in English. The recordings are also available. It's a great mixture between human-centered research, researchers doing talks and practitioners. And I would very much like to invite you to join our FIRST SIG on human factors in security. These are the topics that we have been covering. We usually do a call once a month, and you can join our meeting tomorrow. And this is when I would like to introduce my co-chair, Björn, from FIRST. He's also here, so do talk to him. And tomorrow we'll be doing a great workshop where Björn will be presenting research that they're doing at FIRST in Norway on preventing exploitation of personnel and principles and measures. And we're really here to discuss the principles and measures with you. So do come and join. And that's it. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you.
And to seeing you.
We have time for one question, and depending on the question and the answer, for two.
Great. Could we have the lights up?
Yeah. We can't... the lights? Okay, thank you. There are 4 microphones along the room. Well, one question.
How do you think about positive versus negative reinforcement, right? Like there's the punishment of you failed versus the reinforcement of you did good. And how should teams be thinking about that?
Oh, well, I mean, it's one question what I think, which is, I think, not particularly relevant. I think it's much more relevant to look at the research, and there is a huge body of research that kind of indicates it's much better to not punish. And this is research that comes from behavior change interventions. There's actually more than one framework. We have a lot of research kind of coming from health, also environmental behaviors. And the most important thing to change behavior is access. So it's not knowledge, it's really access. So if you make a behavior that you want people to do really, really easy, and think it from them, from their side, so that means UX and also testing it with them, that's the best way of making sure it's going to happen. And especially on the punitive side, there's one really interesting study that is from Ireland. I think it came out this year. I think about 1,000 people were asked on reporting, and it was really shocking because the people who, I don't remember the percentages, I'm really bad with numbers, I forget them all the time, but a lot of people said that they were no longer reporting because they heard of like so many people being punished for making a mistake and kind of reporting it, that they no longer engage with it, they no longer report. And this number really increased with people who had seen someone in their environment, so either in their own workplace, other workplaces being fired. I know that there are companies who have this practice of firing people if they fell for a fish 3 times. And that's probably the worst idea you can do because, I mean, we all know the most important thing, the most important behavior is reporting, right? Because it really makes a difference.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Cornelia, and another applause for Cornelia. Thank you so much.